We ended at this big, huge, like stadium. That's the only thing I would call it. I call it the Stadium of Light. And we were put in the sky boxes because we were in beds up above. And so I remember being in there, and then I remember there being this long pause. And next thing I know, I'm out of my bed and I'm in that Stadium of Light. And
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Channel Within. Today, I'm talking with Holly Porter. Thank you, Holly, for being here with me today.
thanks for having me, Mira. Happy to be here.
Great. So, why don't we talk a little bit about you? You're an entrepreneur of multiple startups, a mom of eight. Talk a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, I was raised in Las Vegas, Nevada, and when I was almost 14, my dad moved our family. I had nine kids in our family, so we had a big family, and he moved us kicking and screaming to a little tiny town in Utah called New Harmony. It's a beautiful place, but when you're 14, it wasn't so beautiful. I went kicking and screaming, and the population was 198, and our family was 5% of it.
Oh,
So
wow.
we had to ride a bus to school. I like my whole world kind of got tipped upside down. And again, it was a smart move on my dad's part for the kids and for a fun place to be raised. But I liked having a life at 14, right? I just was into boys and things like that. And so but I lived there and then I graduated from high school a year early, not because I was super smart. I always hung around kids older than me and I just always wanted to like get on with life and have three jobs, which never has stopped since then. And so I graduated early and then got married actually very young, 18. Um, yeah, anyway, so I had four kids. My husband had four kids later on when we got married. And we put eight kids together in the same house, had custody of all of them, and wild ride. So yeah, in between that, I've had, gosh, I just incorporated my 12th company. So we always had three or four at a time. Our kids most weren't.
Congratulations.
Oh, well, I don't know. And sometimes, I mean, some were great, some were okay, and I just was an early adapter and things, and I'd get an idea and wanted to make it happen, and some were better than others, but we've kind of followed our entrepreneur journey with the kids. Like when I was home, I had a daycare, and then I had a preschool, then I had a children's clothing store. So as my kids grew up, I did things around them, what I could do. And there was only one of my kids that actually was like what I would call a daycare kid. So I was proud of that. At least we didn't have to go through all that. And yeah, it's been a lot of learning lessons, lots of long journey, and I'm an entrepreneur through and through. Yeah, I mean, our kids are all adults now. My baby, gosh, he's 30, almost, he'll be 32 this next year. So we have almost 19 grandkids out of those eight children, and that's a lot of fun. A lot of them live around by me. And so I had moved to Cedar City, Utah for many years, and then I lived in St. George, Utah, and now I'm back in Cedar City right now where most of my kids, so I have about 14 grandkids that live right around us. So yeah, that's a lot of fun.
How
Always something.
exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah, that sounds like fun, and I bet it's never a dull moment.
never. Yeah.
So, if we can talk about the NDE itself, then Holly.
Sure. Yeah. I want to almost say dun dun dun. Here comes the chaos because it's funny. It reminds me of, we watch a Hallmark movie and it's like my husband and I joke because it's the same plot on everything. Girl meets boy, they fall in love, then they have a fight, then they have a happy ending. And we all want that happy ending, right? And for me, my big shift was definitely during COVID. We all suffered from COVID, not just me. Everybody has a COVID story. I can't think of one thing in the history of the world that affected everybody so quickly as COVID that we are aware of, obviously, because of the internet. But um, I about fall of 2021 is when it hit me, and I really never thought I would get it. I was just super healthy. I didn't have any medications, just never got sick. And I got it at a conference, came home, and that was where I landed myself a week later. So I wasn't in a rush to get to the hospital. And of course, back then, most of the people that got put in the hospital and then put on a ventilator didn't make it. And so, there was obviously that fear just because of what we knew. And I woke up one morning a week into this journey and I knew I was in trouble. Instinctively, I was like, woke up my husband and I said, I'm in trouble. I can't breathe. I felt like I had an elephant sitting on my chest. And so he somehow got us there because I gave it to him and he was about 2 days behind me on his own journey. And we got to the hospital. He dropped me off up front, went and parked. And he said by the time he walked back in the ER, which they're very slow, I'm assuming everywhere the ERs are pretty slow, they already had me on my way to the ICU, like just for him parking and coming in. So my oxygen was 63, and they told me my organs were starting to shut down. Like I was in a lot of trouble. So I'm pretty sure for about 4 days, I refused to be intubated. I could only have one visitor. Luckily, I could have one because so many people died without someone there. And I could have one person with me every 24 hours. My husband couldn't come because he had COVID. And it took him 3.5 weeks before he was able to get in and see me myself. I went through two intubations, a trachea, I had sepsis, a couple other infections that were life-threatening. So the first 3.5 weeks were where all my experiences were, not just the NDE. I had out-of-body experiences. I had a spiritual transformative experience, which was the last experience I had. And then I had the NDE in between these out-of-body things. Very, very, very sick. I know exactly when the NDE was because I it was in between my two intubations, and yeah, and so that's kind of how it went. With me, my experience, I always took my bed that I can't remember not taking my bed on my journeys, which was very strange. I think I was I was mentally aware enough that I was so sick that if I didn't take my bed with my body, then I may not get it back. And so it just went with me on my journeys. And then I would leave my bed to be out in these experiences. And the near-death experience was the same. I was being rolled out into the hallway of the hospital, and I had just signed all the paperwork which they make you do before they intubate you. And so that was fresh on my mind. And I obviously knew I was in trouble because I started shaking my finger at the reception nurse station area. I rescind my DNR. I rescind my DNR. And that's do not resuscitate. So I must have been aware, I was headed somewhere I maybe didn't want to be. And as I went down the hallway, I could see on both sides other hallways when you meet the cross piece, other beds being rolled down as well. Which now I believe were other people dying in the hospital because about half of us were dying at that time. And as we ended at this big, huge like stadium. That's the only thing I would call it. I call it the Stadium of Light. And we were put in the sky boxes because we were in beds up above. And so I remember being in there, and then I remember there being this long pause. And next thing I know, I'm out of my bed and I'm in that stadium of light. And I mean, like a stadium, but so much bigger. Like hundreds and thousands of people were there. And I remember looking around, and everybody was in like really bright white clothing. And I remember seeing feet. So nobody was on the ground. They were all floating. But just everywhere, like people everywhere. And my senses, I just want to mention when I was in the hospital, at one time I had lost, well, many, many days, all senses. So like they tie your hands to a bed when you're on a ventilator so that you won't pull it out. And so I had no touch of anything. And then taste and smell were gone from COVID. And then I'm past legally blind, and so without correction, and I can't see who anyone is unless they're about 8 inches in front of my face. And then they were all covered with, the hats and the mask and the gowns all in yellow, and most of them wore glasses, and so everybody looked the same. So I had that, and then the ventilator for some reason took like 90% of my hearing away. So I joke saying everybody sounded like the Charlie Brown school teacher, the wah wah wah. And so I was really happy when I was in an induced coma a lot of that time because it was miserable. I mean, when I mean, it's almost like I would know what it feels like to almost be a vegetable. You just can't, you just don't have anything. And so as I'm in the stadium of light, my senses were on fire. I mean, everything was heightened. And I remember when you would look at people, you had so you had the gift of all knowing is what I call it, because like I have in normal life, and I always have had the gift, we all get gifts. I had the gift of knowing, and it's not a psychic thing or anything. I don't relate it to that. It's like when people ask you, when you have that, people say to you a lot, well, how do you know that? How do you know that? It's like you just do. It's that gift of knowing that you just know. And it was so it was like the gift of all knowing. And you could look at someone, nobody was talking, so it was definitely telepathic. And you could think a thought, and before you even had the thought, you had an answer. I mean, it was just like, and I just remember thinking, wow, this is amazing. I mean, I could become the smartest person around, just knowing anything if you just ask the right questions. And then all of a sudden, from all four directions, I could hear music starting. And later, I kind of I said to my sisters that, oh, it was the best concert I ever went to. And I mean, it truly was. It was an angelic concert, is how I would put it. And it was the sound and the music and the words. And I had never heard any of them. I didn't know the words to any of the song, or I never heard them, but I did, like, I knew the words. So I think it was that knowing. It was that, I caught on. Like what I'm saying is I could just, I hear it, and then I could just sing right along with them because it was just there. And so the next thing I realized, I am in what I would call my life review, and I'm watching it as if I'm sitting like in a theater. It was like, yeah, that's the best way to explain it. Like a play, almost like I'm reviewing it as a play. And all I'm seeing is good. And I'm thinking, this is cool. I've done plenty of naughty things. I'm only seeing the good. Awesome. And so I just, played that out. And then I got told to do two things. I was told that I needed to start this nonprofit. It's called Adventure Bucket Wish. I wasn't given any other instructions than that. Um, and so, okay, that was what I was told to do. And then the second thing, I had pitched the day I found out I had COVID. I was very sick. And I got up and I went to my office and I pitched on a Zoom to about 9 people this company that wasn't incorporated yet. It was called Retreat RnR. It was mostly just the concept, but this company had a billionaire backer. And I was really excited to partner with them because I just thought the whole concept, the idea of everything, it was a software company. It would just it would just flow. It would just go fine. But I was told not to partner with them, and that wasn't the highest and best good of the company, that it needed to be stay mine, and not to do it. And then the next thing I know, I'm thrusted back into my painful existence of a body, and I'm there, and I wake up. My sister Jill happened to be there that day, and the doctors had told her that I was doing better. So she went and ran an errand and came back, and I wake up, and she said I could see like tear in your, like you were like there was, I never had anxiety before. So like I had anxiety so bad in the ICU. I mean, if you're in the ICU, it creates a lot of trauma too. PTSD, you get all kinds of things just from that kind of trauma. And she said she went and got the alphabet board because there's a paper they give you, and that's how you spell out things because you can't talk. And she said you started spelling things out, and you spelled out KID, and she's trying to help me because it was a huge effort I didn't have any energy, you know. So sometimes it took she said sometimes it took 2 hours sometimes for me to communicate one word because I just couldn't, you know, do anything. And she said, "You got that out." And oh, kids, do you need me to tell your kids something? And no, that wasn't it. And I kept spelling NAP. And she said, "Gosh, when you spelled out kidnap, I she's like, I ran an errand. What happened while I was gone?" She says, "I felt like throwing up. You know, I was like looking for the garbage can because I was so sick to my stomach thinking they were there to protect me. What happened? And why do I say I'm kidnapped?" And that just then she's trying to process her feelings around it, and the doctor and the nurse walk in to extubate me, and there were still spirits in the room. And I'm thinking it was more of an anxiety feeling because I don't it's weird because you think there would be a lot of this fear if you're thinking you're kidnapped. And I just remember seeing those spirits in my room, but they weren't evil. I didn't feel like negative or anything. Which were probably protector spirits, is what I'm thinking, right? That brought me back. That's more what I think happened.
Did you
But
have, were you
yeah.
able to see spirits before the NDE or no?
Um, So I've had experiences over my life when I've paid attention. I think I push a lot of that down. Yes, off and on, I have. I've had some things over my lifetime that I just never, it's like you don't put it together. You don't go, oh yeah, that I remember now that happened. And I remembered a lot more later as I process things. Yeah. So, but this was different. I mean, I don't know how many, and I can't even tell, I don't know who they were. I almost want to say about three is what I would estimate. Um, but she was opening doors and closets and drawers, showing me no one's in there. So I realized obviously I was the only one that could see them. And so then, okay, so then that was that experience. And I just couldn't figure out like, why did I feel kidnapped? Why did I just come from this most peaceful, loving, light place with all these beautiful souls and come back and feel kidnapped? Like I just, it was odd. I mean, there was a lot of things. Of course, I had, you know, COVID's a brain disease. There was a lot of COVID fog. There was a lot of medications in my body. I knew for sure from the beginning that I knew a near-death experience. I didn't know a lot about them or anything, but like I knew where I was. I could tell the difference between all of them. I could tell the difference between a nightmare, a dream, lucid dream, obviously the near-death experience, the spiritual experience I thought was a near-death, which some people say that was still a near-death experience, but it was a spiritual thing. And then the out of body was different. Like they were all so different. That as I put it together, I was like, okay, these are different experiences. And later I learned about all of them. I didn't even know different experiences existed. But the next 2 years was life. I call it my 2 years of hell. It was awful. I didn't realize that apparently a lot of people that have these experiences go through similar things as I'm learning. But I didn't know. I was just surviving. I got long COVID after I had about a year and a half long health journey. 9 doctors. I mean, walked in on no drugs, walked out on 12, slowly got off them. I mean, I was one sick person. All the diagnoses that it caused started coming in, and going from being super healthy and having lots of energy and running 3 or 4 companies at a time to just, I mean, it was that complete surrender where you just had to let people now help you. And we were going through some family hardships. You would think, like for me, it was like, your kids and your siblings, you think, wow, we almost just lost you. You think they would gravitate towards you and hang on a little tighter. And it was like I repelled everybody. It was just such a weird experience. And I cried every day for 2 years, and I'm not a crier. And I prayed every day to God, why take me? Like, why would you save me to put me through this? I don't understand this. And meantime, I was doing what I was told to do. I had started within like 4 months after out of the hospital, I started the nonprofit, applied for the 501(c)(3. I incorporated Retreat RnR. Like I was moving forward because I knew that's what I needed to do, even though I was, all the chaos. I got a lot of that done, by the way, before this 2 years started. Like it was like, I think God helped me do that because I don't know how I would have been able to do that when I really crashed. And I mean, we were, yeah, just it's like if you take every bad day in your life that you've ever had and times it by 100, that's like the weight and the heaviness I felt every single day. It was just so hard to describe. And I'm still thinking, why did I feel kidnapped? I'm still like not, trying to process all this. So at the end of the 2 years, I I found out about IANS, which is International Association for Near-Death Studies. They've been around 50 years. They just had celebrated a 50-year anniversary with Dr. Raymond D. Moody, and he created this book and he's the one that cloned the name near death that we call it. And I ended up going to the conference and I actually was a vendor at the conference. So I thought that would kind of put me in ear's length of, processing, putting things together. So I didn't really get to go to any of I bought the online version. I could hear the speakers, but um, so I didn't immerse myself completely, but that's where I found out a lot of things. And then I came home and I'm just at the tail end of this 2 year. So I'm really starting to think about all this I learned. And I decided I've been trained in hypnosis. And so I knew the process. And I called my mentor and coach and said, "Hey, would you do a hypnosis session on my near-death experience? I decided I'm going to write a book." And by the way, I knew another thing I knew when I came out of all this was that I had two more books to write. And I had already had a lot of books. So it was like I wasn't that interested in writing a book again. Um, and I knew I had two. Um, I just launched one of them, by the way, on 11/11 of 2025, and that was
Nice.
what's that?
I said that's nice. Congrats. What's the name of
Yeah,
that one?
it's called Near Death Shift, which is it's for me it has to be a learning for people too. So it's my story in the beginning, part one, and part two are all the lessons I learned around the SHIFT acronym, which is surrender, hope, intuition, faith, and transformation. And I talk about like 8 different chapters are about all of that, and we compare it to like people in history and things that we all process, and so I'm proud of it. So personal development and my story all in one. um but I was working on the book a couple years ago, and so I asked this friend of mine that does hypnosis, would you do that session? But I just wanted it on the near death, nothing else. I felt like I had all the other pieces, but the near death experience was just there were pieces missing, including that pause before I got into the stadium. I was like, I needed to figure that out. And it's amazing what our brains know that we don't know. And that was one of the best decisions I made around this because I drove to Las Vegas and we did this session. It was about an hour and 40 minutes. And it took me it was almost like having another near-death experience. I hate to even compare it to that because I saw all the bright and the light in the actual experience, but this one was kind of like the rest of the story that I didn't remember. But it took me I ended up being into this place called the in-between. So the light was on the left and the dark was on the right, and I'm in the middle somewhere. That's why I call it the in-between. And when I was in the light, there was fog, there was light, like there was so much brightness, but there was also a lot of matter floating around, but I could see through it. It's really hard to explain. But over here in the in between, it was like shadowy, I mean, shadowy colors, cobalt blue and silver and gray and black, and they're swarming around. But the matter would swarm around and it would form a heart, and the heart would flow over to the light, the left. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, even in the dark, we're attracted to the light. And then I knew somebody was there. Um, he had me hold the matter that was there because it was like he says, "Is anybody there?" And I said, "Yeah, somebody is here." So there was an entity. I didn't feel evil necessarily. I wasn't afraid. In hypnosis, you can come out of it anytime you want. If you don't want to be there, you can open your eyes. You can do that. I knew that process, but I asked for that process. I wanted to be there. I wanted to understand what was missing. And then again, no fear. And so we were able to bring this entity and speak to the entity, who told us his name was Darby. And he said that he wanted my light and he couldn't go to the light and he couldn't have his own. So he wanted mine. And my friend, the hypnotist, he had my back. I loved because he bantered with him quite a bit. Like he would say, "You're stealing her light. That's her light. She earned that. You need to let her have it." And, they went back and forth, and it didn't sound like he had any relationship to me. He just, like, he's just going to grab my light because he could and he wanted it. Then I felt the heat and the brightness and the light on the side of my face. And I hear him say, "The light's coming to get her, and I'm not going to be able to stop it." And so then he says, "Well, then let her go." And so in the end, he did. He let me go. And I remember looking over two times, up on the right side, but way, way far away was this mountain that had one eye on it. And I remember the second time seeing it thinking, "You're seeing this for a reason." I just remember thinking, noted, okay, I don't know what that's about. I'm still figuring that out. I felt like it was a protection of some sort, though, for sure. And there's lots of things about the one eye, evil and not evil. I mean, it just depends what people's beliefs are. But I believe, even though it was on that dark side, I feel like it was protecting me because it was facing the light. And then in front of me, I saw a tree. And when I saw the tree, so much peace came over me because when I incorporated the company Retreat RnR, I knew the logo needed to have a tree in it. And I remember telling the branding people that. And nobody questioned it. It was like, yeah, the favicon, I want a tree. The logo, I want to have a tree. And so when the logo came back to me, it had 11 leaves and 11 roots on it, which is 1111. And my birthday is 11. And I got out of the hospital on 1111. So of course I launched my book on 1111. So many things around that were happening. I never had them change a thing on the logo. I was like, that's perfect. Later, I even interviewed the guy that made it and asked him what his thought process was around it, and that was a great story too. Um,
Do you mind
and
sharing it?
but he just kind of told a story about how I was told, I told him a little bit about it, why I was doing it, the nonprofit, everything around that, and he just said that that's just the energy that was around it. That's what I came up with, and I don't even know what faith the guy is, if he's Christian, whatever. But it was just like I remember when he told me, it was just such a confirmation of, wow, like you were almost inspired to do that for me. Because I said, is it something you grab? Like, was that tree somewhere when you got it, when you made, whatever? And he said, "No, I designed it just for you." And I mean, it was just like, wow, I was just confirmation that that was the right thing. And obviously the tree I saw in my hypnosis wasn't the same tree, obviously. But the symbolism of the tree was basically, remember, I had just come out of this 2 years of hell. I had been suffering very, very badly. And it was like God saying to me, I call them God gifts. It was like saying, "You created that. You went and did what I asked you to. You didn't, partner with that company. You did this and you created it, not even remembering that this was part of your near-death story." And I was like, okay, so that was great. So then I get over to the light, and then I'm seeing that matter there again, but how it's forming into hearts now, they're like pinkish hue, colored hearts. And when I did my nonprofit, the other thing I was told to do, we had our first fundraiser gala. And when we did that, instinctively, I knew that every bag that we gave everybody at their dinner plate had an ornament in it that said hope. And then I knew every bag needed to have a rose-colored quart heart in the bag. And so when I see the hearts, and they have this pink hue to them. It was again, it was another God gift saying, you you know, well done, you did it, you listened, that's here you go. And so like those two symbols were just so heartfelt for me because I had had such a hard time for 2 years, and it was just like so healing for me at the time. And then I'm seeing my life review again, but I remembered this time to ask where's the bad. I wanted to know. And God said to me, I'm showing you the good because that's what mattered or matters. And I thought, yeah, it is. You know, you're right. I mean, what a God of love, right? And then he gave me a message, a couple messages, but the one that really just would have changed everything differently if I would have known it before then. And it was love them where they're at. And I thought, wow. I mean, before I felt the love, the joy, the peace, but like to if I would have known love them where they're at, that if we just do that to everybody, it takes the judgment out of everything. And for me, that 2 years, I probably would have reacted differently, and it would have changed all the lessons that I needed, which now I know are for the philanthropy work I'm going to do in the future. And I wouldn't have had all those lessons. I wouldn't have seen the systems of what we were going through with some grandkids. And, we had to deal with icky attorneys and DCFS and just icky stuff. I wouldn't have been able to see that to know how to help later. And so that was amazing. And then another thing that my hypnotist told me was the message, more will be revealed to you when the time is right. And when I was told that, I thought, wow, this is great. I'm at peace with that. Usually I want to know everything, and I didn't need to know everything. It was, I probably couldn't have handled all of that. It's like even this last year, I figured out another piece to the puzzle while I was finishing the book, and I thought, whoa, oh my gosh, I had never thought that that was, and I remember running to my editor, running to my husband and saying, hey, remember this? I think this is what happened. And it's like, just it's kind of like a surprise, and a nice surprise to be able to put pieces together. Um, and so that was where later one of the things I figured out was Darby, the entity. Darby is when I had the pause in the Stadium of Light, that is where Darby, I believe, took me. He took me from that space before I got over to the light and brought me to this in-between place. And I didn't figure that out until a couple, probably 2.5 years later. And I remember when I finally did, when you feel in your core the truth of something, like you know without a shadow of a doubt, that was the truth. That's what happened. And it was kind of like that feeling like, oh my gosh, and that's so weird. It took me this long to figure that. How did I not figure that out before? And just little things like that when I'm getting like drips of the rest of the story. And it's exciting to know, hey, you're still going to be remembering things. I've been told by others that it takes up to 10 years to unravel everything that you get and see. And I think that's the gift in it all, is that it takes a lot to process everything. And I've also been told that others that have experiences, if they were on medication, this is an interesting concept. If they were on medication, they don't think they remember everything. They might get it like I am in little pieces later. Whereas if somebody has an accident or whatever and they're not on anything, they maybe remember more than others. So it's interesting listening to other people's stories and going, huh, they're similar but different. We all get our own. I believe for me, I believe God shows us, even in prayer, even in whatever in our regular life, God shows us the way we will understand it. And that's just kind of my theory around that. And we're going to see what we need to see when we need to see it. And I believe that's true for everybody. If we're open to it and we just listen, I think we'll get it. Those
That
answers are
makes
there.
sense. Yeah, that makes sense to me because we have to be able to recognize and then perceive and to comprehend. And so, what you said about the medication versus non medication also makes a lot of sense.
There's many ways you can do that. I mean, there's so many things you can heal from. I mean, me personally, I feel like hypnosis is such a quick way, and some energy work behind that as well. A quick way to move through things a lot faster. Sometimes you don't have to process all that. You don't have to relive it. And I feel like that's what talk therapy, not cutting anyone else down, for their belief or whatever. But I feel like you could go for years and you could process in a hypnosis session, I would say years of talk therapy that quick. It just, if you have the right person, I feel like that's something I wish more people were open to because and I know a lot of people are doing plant medicine, things like that that are helpful, and whatever that works for anybody, what's going to work. But I feel like with talk therapy, it's just, why do you have to sit and live in that and rehash it and refill it and re? It's like, no, let's like get through it and move on. Let's like focus on moving forward, get all that crap out. But
Yeah,
that's
makes sense. I have some questions on the NDE. Um, how long were you actually hospitalized for? Because you said it took your husband 3.5 weeks to come see you.
Yeah, he came the day I got the trachea, so he never saw me ventilated, and I was ventilated two different times. I was in there for a total of 70 days, but in two different hospitals. So about a month in the first hospital, and then I think over 5 weeks in the second hospital. They took me by ambulance to one that was a little bit stepped down. I was still in ICU for about 2 weeks, and then I went to med surg, and then they tried to send me to a third place, but I begged him not to. I had a son that had just built a house on one level. I was on oxygen for months and months after, and I just said I'd be good. And they could send, I had, I think, two or three therapists that came there, occupational, physical, I don't know what else. But I mean, it was just such a long road back. So 70 days in the actual hospital. Yeah, a long time.
Yes. Do you know how long you were on the other side for the NDE experience itself?
Yeah, I really don't. And I mean, nobody else would either. No concept of time. So I know it was between the first and second intubation because I was off of it for about 18 hours and then they had to re-intubate me, which kind of makes me wonder if because I was processing everything that was happening and I felt kidnapped, if that's why I relapsed a little bit and they had to revent me. You just kind of wonder like what was happening to me physically that nobody else knew, right? Because our emotions really can control everything about our body.
Yeah. And in the Stadium of Light, when you were describing that, I actually read a book by a Swami in the Paramhansa Yogananda order where she described a situation just like that, a stadium full of light beings where um where a concert was put on for the creator of the universe and the sound was the most angelic.
It was
Uh,
pretty amazing. I mean, I'm not even a big concert goer or lover necessarily of all the crowds anymore, but
yeah.
I just, yeah, oh yeah, I would love to. And I didn't get to relive that space in the hypnosis session because once he took me over to the life review again, I asked the questions, I got the messages there. I never ended up going back. That's where I was going to the concert and he pulled me out of it. And I was kind of bummed because I'm thinking, but that was the part I remembered, right? So it was like the timing was okay, but I would have liked to enjoyed the concert again. So maybe I'll have another hypnosis session on a concert.
Yeah. And in terms of the conversations, the feeling, do you remember anything? I know it was done uh instantly and via telepathy. Do you remember anything there?
I just love the knowing. It was just that I knew that feeling because I already had that a little bit, in my life, but to have that the gift of all knowing, like just to be able to, I mean, gosh, can you imagine just having a thought and having the answer instantly? Who needs the AI? I mean, that's amazing to have your own self be able to just like I mean, we would all be brilliant geniuses. I don't know what this world would look like. I guess if it was filled with good people with that kind of technology or geniuses, it'd be great. And if it was bad, it would be really bad. But yeah, I just remember it just the joy and the love you felt and that peace you felt. It was like, wow, you just like want to be in that space forever. And you know how when people do visualization things, I mean, if anyone's listening and you've done those, or you can do those, by the way, just meditation, you can do those kinds of things. It's like when you go to your happy place from now on, that's my happy place. Like I used to have another place picked out that I would always go to, and you can revisit that anytime you want. I mean, just it's a programming in your own brain, in your own body, letting you know to do that. And everybody has that within them, and you can visit it, create it for yourself of where you want to be, where that peaceful feeling, where that best life is for you. And when you're having those hard days, go shut your eyes for 10 minutes. Just be in that space, and I bet it'll shift the energy around your day.
Yeah, that's sound advice. In the life review, you mentioned that you were told what to do. So, did you see anyone with you, or was it just a voice that you were hearing?
Yeah, it's interesting. I no, I didn't see like when I felt like it was God saying something to me, I didn't see him. No. But I knew it was him. Like like I had another experience with my spiritual experience where I had a granddaughter that had passed away about 5 months before I got sick. And I saw her as an adult and I knew it was her. It's just like that knowing again. You just know. Um, yeah, it's amazing.
And I love the message that you came back with, love them where they're at, because I feel, in addition to it helping us with family and just acquaintances, whether it's in real life or virtually,
Yeah.
we put our expectations on how an event should happen. And that's what causes a lot of miscommunication and problems. And so that is so deeply impactful to practice, and it will make the world of difference, like you
I have a
said.
little story. Can I share a story around that?
Yeah.
So about this last May, no, March, sorry. I was on a business cruise and I met somebody from Puerto Rico that was on there. His dad was one of the dignitaries that was on this cruise, and he was a therapist, a talk therapist. And we stayed up way, way late talking about all this stuff one night. He was just fascinated with it, and he was telling me how he literally used the word hate, hated these people that had done all these horrible things to his clients, basically, because he had heard all of this therapy that he was doing and all these perpetrators and all these evil people, right? And he just said, I hate them for what they have done. And I told him the story and I told him about love and where they're at. And the next day he messaged me on WhatsApp because we were on a cruise ship and I got it. And he said, "You have changed my life." He said, "Those words have shifted my whole thinking around that feeling." And he said, "I will never forget those words." And he's actually messaged me a few times since and said, "You know what? I was so grateful to you for that night. You told me that message." And I thought, wow, that message isn't just for me. I want to live by it every day. Yes. And I have to remind myself of it, trust me, because we all have that little judgment side, or I mean, it's just there. It's human nature. I work at it every day, but it definitely shifts it. It does take that judgment out. And I love that for him, that he's going to remember that and he's going to probably do his life a little bit differently because he had that same message.
Yeah, it's definitely a beautiful reminder. And I'm human also and make these mistakes. It's just pulling, just reminding yourself we could do better. And so that is such a great, great piece of advice.
Yeah. we can always do better.
Yeah.
But we also need
Yeah.
to give ourselves grace that
Yes.
maybe we're doing the
Yes.
best we can with what we
Yes.
have at the moment.
Yes, exactly. When we know better, we do better. That's
That's
what
right.
Maya Angelou says, right?
Yeah, that's in my book.
Exactly. What about some other lesson? What other lesson you think is one of your favorites from these experiences, whether it's the transformative experience, the out of body, or
Mhm.
the NDE as well?
Well, the spiritual one, it's not that long of a story. That was probably I almost want to say that was my favorite because that was the moment that defined me living or dying. And so I guess that's my favorite because I lived. Um, so that story, so I have a cousin that's like a sister cousin, lived in a different state. She texted my sisters. I don't know who was there at the day they read it to me, but I wasn't doing well in the hospital. And this was my last experience in that first hospital, so the first 30 days. And her text basically said I wouldn't normally text something like this because it was spiritual for her, but I know Holly's not doing very well, and would you please read it to her? And so it's written in my book. We actually put the text in there, but the gist of it is um, that she was praying for my husband and I and our well-being, and she is a feeler, and she sensed all these spirits around her. And so she asked who they were. Can I know the names of who's here, you know? And one by one she listed all the names, and it was her message was to let us know that not only here on earth are these people praying for us, but you have all these ancestors praying for you too, you know, and told me their names and everything. And I remember they must have put me back in a coma shortly after that because I remember my prayers were changing. They were like, I mean, at this point, you know, we're at least 3.5 weeks in. I was miserable. I was kind of done fighting. I was like, you know, okay, I'm in the reasoning stage with God. Either get me better or get me out of here. Like I'm done. I wasn't afraid to die. I was just like, okay, you know. And so at that point I was mad. I was actually mad that she got that experience and I didn't. Like that was what I was like kind of complaining to God about. I was saying, you know, this isn't fair. You know, she's like a sister, so it was kind of like that sibling rivalry and you know, that's not fair. I'm the one suffering. Why did she get that? Well, my mom had been with me a few times while I was in the hospital. She died about a year and a half prior to that. And she would come always on my right side. And she never had spoke to me. And when I was doing that little prayer, she came to me on the right side. And that's when she said to me, it's not your time to go and you need to fight. And then my brother, who had died in a really bad car wreck as an adult, and so did his wife in a bad car wreck before that, he came and kind of put his hand on her shoulder, showing me, you know, the support. And as the word fight was said, then I started hearing it chanted fight, fight, fight. Every time the word would get said in front of my bed above me, was all the ancestors in white. Okay. Grandparents and my favorite aunt and my grandbaby. That's when I saw her as an adult, but I knew it was her. And I saw all of them and then fight another row of people. And now they're in street clothes. So I knew they were living people. My husband comes and siblings and kids and friends. And it just kept fight, fight, fight until it wasn't like thousands, hundreds of thousands like the stadium of light. It was thousands though. And all these people I didn't even know. But it was such a defining moment to know, oh, I just have to fight. Okay. Not like I wasn't, but it was like, this is your answer. You're going to live. I mean, it was a long journey back, but I knew I would live at that point. It was just that such defining moment. But to know I had that many people supporting me, and later I figured out, I think all of those people I didn't know that I saw were the prayer lists I was on of all the people that had me on all kinds of prayer lists everywhere, all around the world. I had friends all around the world, and I just felt like, wow, that I have a lot of support, and I'm gonna fight. And so that was that story.
Oh, absolutely reaffirming and just drives home that prayer. is everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And people that don't believe in prayer, it's probably because you're not getting the answers that you want. And sometimes they're the answers you need, not what you want. We don't always get what we want. We get what we're supposed to have. And I think that's part of the prayer is just letting go, surrendering, having faith. I mean, I teach in my book, you don't have to have a near-death experience to have your own shift. Your own shift can start now. What would you do differently if you could? And then why can't you make
I
anything?
really like that because I was going to ask, what are practical tools you think for people who have not had a spiritual transformative experience or an NDE? And that's the answer right there.
It really is. Just everybody deserves their own shift and if
It
it's not
starts from,
handed to you,
yeah, yes,
go create
yes.
it. Yeah.
I like that. What would you say to someone who is at the edge of death or taking care of someone who is at the edge of death?
Oh, never be afraid of it. I mean, I know that's an easier statement sometimes said than done. And it's such a beautiful place. The people that get the choice, I believe when they have an experience and when they're near death, whether then they're in heaven and they get to choose to come back or stay, because we hear those stories all the time. But we don't talk to the people that chose to stay. They pass on. And I'll tell you what, if I'd have had a choice, I'm not thinking I would have come back. Honestly, I was never afraid of death. And when you're in that place, why on earth would anyone want to come back here? I mean, I don't mean that rude, but it's like I probably would have chose to stay if I wouldn't have been given some specific things to do. I know a lot of people need to come back to be here for their family, their children, and I joke that I could probably haunt my kids on the other side and they do more what I wanted than they do now as adults. But um I just that love that's there and I so hard on the ones that are here and we're suffering and we're missing them and there's a lot of actually like near death experiences that people are sitting in with loved ones that are dying they have with them. There's a lot of stories about that. That's
The
so maybe
shared,
what's
the
that?
shared death experience.
The shared death experiences and go look some of those up. If you're working with someone maybe terminal right now and it's not going to be long, go listen to some of those. Just go on YouTube. They'll be on there. Shared death experiences. That's probably what I'd search. Thanks for bringing that up because they're special. And don't think because you haven't had one of these experiences or you didn't experience that when somebody died that you're not special or you didn't deserve it. It's nothing to do with that. Your lessons are just different here and your challenges are different. Everybody gets their own. I believe we get what we can handle even though we feel like we can't. Um, it's true. It's true. And so, but be more open and everybody has intuition. Everybody has it. And sometimes we're shutting it down or we're not listening for it. Open your heart a little bit more, let it in. Don't live in fear, live in love. And remember, love them where they're at.
Yeah, I love that. Again, what a beautiful, incredible story that you have, an NDE experience actually that you have, Holly. And
Thank
I
you.
have three questions that I ask everyone.
Okay.
What brings you joy and laughter these days?
Hmm. I think my grandkids. Yeah, so
Good
much easier
answer.
to be around grandkids than yeah, than your own because you have that wisdom. And I think we should all listen to our grandparents more because they've been there, done that a lot of times. So
Yeah. What would you say to Holly, who is about to have this wonderful experience that changes her life forever?
I would have told myself to stay more present and in the moment and don't grow up so fast. You always wanted to grow up so fast and have all these things, and it's like enjoy the moment. I never really felt like I did that. I'm working really hard to do that now.
That's lovely. What final message or blessing do you have for anyone listening?
Oh, well, again, you don't have to have a near-death experience to have these shifts of your own. And I want to remind you to just really, really look at loving people where they're at and see how that can shift your own life. Just that. That message I had to almost die for. Remember, every time, every time you're judging or you're mad at someone, just think, oh, somebody almost died for this message. Love them where they're at. I'm gonna try that. That would make me happy.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's wonderful. How can people find you?
Well, I'm on all social media. I'm Holly Porter, and you can email me if you have some comments, whatever, holly@hollyporter.com. And my website's hollyporter.com.
I'll include the links. And thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thanks
I
for having me.
hope, awesome. I hope everyone listening had as much fun as I did and enjoyed your talk with us as thoroughly as I did.